en tu vida, de altibajos y aventuras, que fue detrás de tus encantos, tu loca risa y tu dulzura, desconociendo tu pasado, vine a caer entre tus manos, no sabías que eras coleccionista, ahora me doy por enterado, no quiero terminar viviendo en un abismo, de estar contigo y no saber si soy querido, tampoco ser un fracasado, pues otros tantos ya has amado, si hoy me toca a mí sufrir, mejor déjame a un lado. Uno más en tu vida, uno más de aventuras, contigo voy a terminar viviendo en un infierno. Uno más en tus brazos, uno más muero despacio, contigo voy a terminar viviendo en la amargura y la locura. Uno más que a tu vida llegó, uno más que por tu vida pasó, desconociendo tu pasado, vine a caer en tu engaño, en tus brazos, uno más muero despacio, contigo voy a terminar viviendo, y poco a poco mira voy enloqueciendo, en tus garras cayó, y sin fuerzas quedó, no podía vivir sin verte, y ahora solo deseo perderte, que va a fracasar, pero que va a terminar, ilusionado con tus mentiras, tu hipocresía, tu malicia, en tu vida de aventuras, contigo voy a terminar viviendo como si fuera un infierno.
Hi, welcome to Entre Nosotros on CCP TV, the educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. I'm your host, Gilberto Gonzalez. My guest today is Richard Negrin, City Managing Director. How's it going, man? How are you?
It's going great. Really good to be here with you.
Well, we're glad to have you. Now, usually I like to start the show with, like, you know, their birth, you know, like where you and your family came from.
Going way back to where it all began.
Where it all began.
Sure. So I was born in Newark, New Jersey, all the way up, about an hour and a half up north. My parents came here and immigrated from Cuba, really so that I could be born in the United States, to really give me an opportunity and our family an opportunity to have what we believe in, you know, the American dream. So shortly after the revolution in 1961, my parents both came over here separately, didn't know each other.
Oh, they didn't know each other?
Correct. Met here. Really interesting story. Cuba was so totalitarian at the time, obviously after the new regime, that my grandfather had to stay behind in order to make sure that you had actually given everything to the government before they allowed the entire family to immigrate to the United States.
So like house, wealth, money, really?
All of it was confiscated. So they gave up everything they owned really to have the chance to come to the United States so that, you know, the future generations could be born here in the United States. And 6 months later, after they verified that they had, they didn't bury money in your backyard, which lots of Cubans did, and hide assets and do all that, they allowed my grandfather to leave Cuba and join his family here in the United States.
So but your parents weren't together. Did they know each other?
They were not. They met here in northern New Jersey.
Now, but most Cubans, I always hear Cubans, Miami, Florida, strong Cuban community. Yeah. But Newark, New Jersey, like, that's kind of, were there a lot of Cubans?
Yeah, it's a Cuban enclave in Weehawken, Union City, Elizabeth, New Jersey, where I grew up. So I was fortunate. I think it helped frame a lot of my views and my perspective to grow up in a very multicultural community, not unlike areas of Philadelphia like Mount Airy and Northern Liberties and others, where there's kind of a hodgepodge. I had growing up 5 to 10 years old, my friends were this multicultural, rainbow coalition, Black, Polish, working class, and Cuban and Puerto Rican, all, growing up as a small unit.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Where your parents met in Newark?
They met in Elizabeth.
In Elizabeth.
In Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you grew up in Newark then, and like how was that growing up? Did you suffer discrimination, or was it things great, or?
Yeah, I think some of the being treated differently happened when we moved to a better neighborhood. So when we were living in an urban neighborhood, I think folks there really had a melting pot approach to society. But then we decided to try to improve our lives and move out to the suburbs. And we moved to a town in New Jersey called Edison. And that was different and very interesting, where I was often the only Latino inside of, maybe 4 Latinos in the entire high school. Very working class, blue collar neighborhood, where teachers didn't like you for no reason, right? There was, I can remember I had a gym teacher who, I was a really good athlete. I had a gym teacher who was always, Negrin, you're a bum. Just always kind of had a different approach.
Wow.
And it was really interesting.
Now, did you feel it was like, were there other people of color there, or it was just
very few,
few?
Very few. And he would make comments about my Hispanic culture.
Really?
Yeah, in interesting ways.
Wow, that's just it's sad, but it's a reality that really a lot of Latinos go through, really at all facets of life in this country. So you went to high school?
I did, Edison High School there in Edison, New Jersey. Ended up going to college in New York City, Wagner College, where I was fortunate and able to play football. And then actually moved down to this area after a short career in the NFL.
Okay, you tell me now, NFL. Because like the range of your life is just so incredible that. Tell me a little bit about the football.
Well, first of all, I tell people I would still be playing, but I suffered a debilitating injury. They hurt my feelings when they cut me.
My God.
Yeah, bad joke. But the truth is, I was really fortunate at the small college level to win a national championship my senior year.
Wow.
I was captain of the football team all the way back in 1987, before many of the students here at CCP were probably born. But we were fortunate to win the small college national championship, and I was fortunate to get some attention and become a Kodak All-American, and had about 6 teams that showed some interest in drafting me and signing me. And I ended up signing with the Cleveland Browns,
Wow.
which made the most sense. So I got to play a few games in the preseason, was there, made the final roster, thought I was good, and then some running back got hurt, and they had to pick up a running back, and the guy at the bottom of the list has got to go, and that was me.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So, your experience in the NFL, I think there are very few Latinos in the NFL.
Yeah, when I was there, and it was a part of the conversation that we had, I think there was only one other Latino, and he happened to be a Hall of Famer, right? Anthony Munoz from the Cincinnati Bengals.
Wow.
That was openly identifiable as Latino when I was in the NFL. Those numbers have gotten better today.
Do you think it's like in the history of baseball, like African Americans would sometimes change their name for Latinos to kind of be accepted? Do you think similar things happen where Latinos might change their name to?
Yeah, I'm not sure about changing your name. I think it was really about a cultural experience. I think in many of our countries, in Cuba, for example, where my family's from, nobody plays football there, right? The sport is not, it's very uniquely an American sport. Right. They're still trying to make inroads into Europe and Canada and other places. I think when you look at Central America and you look at South America, we just finished the World Cup here, right? That's what the sport is. It's all about football to them is soccer.
Wow. Yeah. So I always get confused with football or soccer, because if you say soccer to Latinos, they'd be like,
yeah,
what is soccer?
Funny.
It's football.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, football. So we get into that argument.
Yeah.
So in Cuba, the main sport is?
It's baseball, boxing, and soccer.
And soccer, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So now, that's your experience. But when you were in college, you also studied law?
Yeah, so pre-law and political science. So I majored in poli-sci and took every possible pre-law class that I could, with the hope and the interest of going to law school. So after the diversion of the NFL, I was with the Cleveland Browns, as I said, in 1988, and then I was in camp with the New York Jets in 1989.
Oh, wow.
So I gave football really those 2 or 3 years, and then decided to go to law school.
And what was your position in football?
I played offensive guard.
Offensive guard.
Yeah, I was a lot bigger and stronger then. Yeah. But so I came down here to go to law school at Rutgers, across the river.
Okay, and you were how many years that took you to do you got a law
school's
degree?
3 years, yeah.
3 years. Cool.
So my first summer in law school, but you can work during law school and get some important experience. That was my first experience with Philadelphia. I had a choice, being a kid who grew up in North Jersey, to go to law school up at Rutgers Newark or Rutgers Camden. And I had gone to college in New York and really loved Philadelphia. I had a good friend who went to Penn, who I visited on occasion, and really fell in love with the city. So I decided to come to law school in Camden. And I was fortunate to get a great job my first year as a law student working for the United States Attorney's Office, the federal prosecutor here in Philadelphia.
Wow.
And I grew up a kid who loved history, right? Just loved American history. It was my favorite class. And there I was every day eating a bag lunch, in front of the Independence Hall, literally on a bench in front of where our country began. And that's how I kind of fell in love with Philadelphia and haven't left. The business model worked with me, right? Get kids to come to school here and keep them here.
So you've been in Philadelphia,
since 1992.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So your connections here, you're really rooted here.
They
in the
are.
city now.
Yeah, I've lived here, the majority of my life.
Wow. So law school, did you work for any other law firms, or did you?
Burlington County Prosecutor's Office during law school, and then upon graduation, the District Attorney's Office here, where I was a prosecutor here in Philly.
And who was the DA at that time?
Lynn Abraham.
Lynn Abraham.
I don't think she knew my name at the time, though, because I was, a new person.
So with the DA, with Lynn Abraham, you were a DA, assistant DA, or something?
Correct, an assistant district attorney, prosecuting cases, worked my way up to major crimes. That was my first real introduction into our neighborhoods, where I spent a lot of time representing, people who are victims of crime, and who have been, hoping to make sure they don't get victimized by the system, in addition to the crime that actually happened, to make sure that they received justice and that we put away some bad guys.
So did you at that time, when the DA's office, you actually went into the neighborhoods because you prosecute people, so you guys went to the neighborhoods and spoke to the people, and how was that experience, just going to the different communities?
Really cool. I mean, I think it's, first you get to learn our neighborhoods. So you get to travel and see areas of the city that you might not see ordinarily, which is really important. And then you get to meet many of our vulnerable folks. Unfortunately, many of the folks who are victimized by crime are the folks who can least afford it, right? Or the folks who are growing up, on the outskirts of our communities and on the edge of all the issues that we face, whether it's poverty or educational challenges. Many of those crime-riddled neighborhoods really have so many of those kids, living in poverty. And you get a chance to see that and actually visit and understand it and get to know those folks as real people.
Now, in the DA's office, were there other Latinos at that time?
Very few.
Very few?
I'd say the entire office, probably a handful, at around 300, just 4 or 5.
Really? And even back then, because you worked for the city, do you feel that at different facets of the city, were there enough Latinos, not enough Latinos?
I think it's always a huge challenge. I mean, I think, when I was in law school, backing up a little bit, I was president of the Alianza, which was the Latino Law Students Association for Rutgers. And one of the biggest things we did was try to increase the number of Latinos who were actually getting into law school. So in my graduating class of a little over 200, I think there were 4 of us.
Wow.
And those are very low numbers. The great thing is, on the gender side, my graduating class at Rutgers in 1995 was the first class to have 50% women.
Wow.
So we made a lot of great strides on the gender side. But on the African American and the Latino side, still huge challenges. If you look at the profession, the legal profession as a whole, still, roughly 1 to 3% of the partners in law firms are people of color.
That's 1 to 3% of so really they're just not enough Latinos. And do you think just not having enough Latinos or African Americans or really people of color kind of impacts on how people see, like for a case, for example, would it impact a case?
Yeah, look, diversity matters, and it makes a huge difference, not just in terms of the quality of decisions that are made, but the strategies that are made. I mean, it's the value that you see with having women in the room, right? I think Latinos and African Americans and that cross sort of multicultural experience when you have, when you make decisions and you develop strategies and drive initiatives is valuable. That's the strength of diversity, that diversity of thought, not just culture, but the diversity of thought and both socioeconomic as well, where people from different cultures, different experiences, different ways of life, they enrich every decision.
So you go from football player to the DA's office.
Yeah, law school was a lot tougher than the NFL.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I can imagine, yeah. But I guess they're both would be just, anyway, the experiences are amazing. So from what happened after the DA's office then, what was your next step in your career?
Large law firm here, one of the largest firms in the entire world called Morgan Lewis. We're very fortunate in Philly to have one of the best firms headquartered right here in Philadelphia.
Best firm for like?
Just large corporate multinational law firm here, something like 1,300 lawyers worldwide.
Wow.
Headquartered right here in Philadelphia. So I was a litigator at Morgan Lewis for almost 5 years.
Wow, so then Morgan Lewis, and were there a lot of Latinos there?
No,
many?
no.
Really?
I think when I was there, in our Philadelphia office, I think I was the only one.
Really?
The only one.
How many people just of color?
Boy, maybe 20.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Small numbers.
Now, do you see that throughout the city that there isn't enough Latino, African American, Asian representation just across the board?
Well, I mean, it's gotten a lot better, especially on the African American side. But on the Latino and Asian side, it's really still a huge challenge. And to your point earlier, I mean, I think it's about the pipeline. When I was at Rutgers arguing for more students, they would point to the number of applicants and say we don't have enough kids who are applying.
That's what they do here, yeah.
That's what they do here, I'm sure. So one of the things we did was create a pipeline program where the students put a program together where we visited some of the talented kids inside of Camden schools who might 4 or 5 years later be thinking about law school but aren't right now, so that they're making the decisions and doing the things they need to do in order to be a good applicant when that time comes, and bringing them in and demystifying what law school is about. I know we're talking about doing some similar things with CCP, bringing neighborhood kids, teaching them about about history in Philadelphia, and then ending up having a program where they actually learn about something like constitutional law from a CCP professor. So they get to sit in those seats and demystify what they're doing, and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think like we know the problems with the school district. I mean, the dropout rates like I don't know, like 60%, particularly for Latinos. So I think I know that they're college and high school are two different things, but I think most colleges don't have enough Latinos. So I think establishing those pipelines is and early on too. Early on.
And you look at great programs like I just attended the first annual graduation for a great program called Year Up that is partnering with Pierce College. They hope to come to CCP next year. Year Up is a great program, not to be confused with City Year, because a lot of folks confuse it with City Year. But what they do is take at-risk young people, mostly of color, who have matriculated in that first year, and that's where we lose a lot of the kids, right? Even the ones who get in struggle because they have to work. They're from a different socioeconomic background. They're focused on some of those priorities in their families, and they're either single moms or the support system is a huge challenge. What Year Up does is give them paid internships that are paid by the private sector. So while they're going to school part-time, they're actually getting employed, getting experience, and building the connections they need to get jobs when they graduate.
That's important.
Which is really neat.
It is, yeah.
And I visited Boston, which is where they're headquartered up in Europe, and met with the children who were involved in the program and helped bring them here to Philadelphia.
Wow. See, so now we get into, you went from Morgan Lewis. Did you go into the city after
No.
that?
Well, I became general counsel of a really big company here called Aramark. I was general counsel to, there are 6 lines of business in Aramark, and I was general counsel to Aramark Healthcare and then later Aramark Corrections, both businesses. And while I was an attorney there for Aramark, I got a call from this crazy guy named Michael Nutter, our great mayor. And we started working together because I was a member of the new Independent Ethics Board here in Philadelphia. And things are pretty good right now, but if you think back to the administration before us, there were something like 22 indictments.
Wow.
And just corruption and in government. And as a former prosecutor, the mayor thought it was great. He's got a number of former prosecutors actually in his administration. And so we worked together on the ethics board. It's where he and I really got to know each other. I always kind of laugh. I've never given him a campaign donation, which is really funny because people ask me that all the time. How did you get this job?
Right.
Were you a major donor? Did you, and he's not about that. So we worked closely together on ethics reform here in Philadelphia. He as a councilman at the time and me as a member of the ethics board.
Wow.
And we built that relationship. And so that started a conversation between he and I that if he ever became mayor, it'd be good to work together again.
Wow.
And that was almost a 2-year conversation where we just kind of thought about it and waited for the right timing. And then one day that timing came.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's just an amazing trajectory of life, like, and then you're Latino, which is like, I think I hope that more people get to realize that you are like these young people out here. You went through what they're going through.
Yeah.
And look at where you are today.
And and one thing I want to say about that, because I think, thank you, and I'm complimented by that, and I'm honored to have the opportunity. But there's something really personal about my life that I think brings that to life, and that is when I was 13, my father was murdered, shot down by a radical Cuban terrorist group. My father had helped negotiate the release of political prisoners in Cuba, and there were radical terrorist groups, one called Omega 7. You may have heard of, who believed that if you negotiated with the Castro government, you were a traitor and should be killed. And they had actually killed 4 or 5 people. A travel agent, they did a lot of crazy things, like 50 bombings or so, mostly in the United States.
Really?
They bombed the FBI building all during the 70s when you and I were very young. And
oh my God.
they bombed the FBI building. They bombed Madison Square Garden because the Cuban ballet was going to play there, stuff like that. And so my father and he was actually driving me home to watch me play my first football game as a kid. And it was a Sunday morning. We were getting in the car, in a speeding car, 2 men with ski masks and a MAC-10 submachine gun. Opened fire and gun hidden down right in front of me, died in my arms at the age of 13. And I say that for a reason. I go out and I talk to kids in Philadelphia, and we've got the lowest violent crime numbers in 40 years.
Wow.
We're really proud of that. And a lot of that has been a huge focus of the mayor and why I'm in this position and why I came to do this job. That event, I think, at the age of 13 has driven my career in terms of what I wanted to accomplish. The first lawyer I met was the prosecutor who was prosecuting the person who killed my dad, right? So that gave me the exposure to the law that might not have been there. It's really interesting how the worst thing that ever happened to me may have been the thing that has driven my career and has driven much of my success, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think what's amazing, one of the things that I hear from everyone when they talk about you is that you really reach out to people. I mean, you really connect with every neighborhood in the city. And I'm like I've lived here all my life, and I've never known someone in a position like yours that does that, and you're doing it, and you're Latino too. So for me, it's my orgullo. I'm more happy about that because then our young people can see here's a Latino who's few in the city and is impacting the entire city, which is awesome.
And to your point, I mean, that's why I share that story.
Yeah.
I go out and I talk to kids as often as I can, and I go to those communities because I think they need to understand. I can remember very real in a visceral way my first day back at school after that happened to me. Wow. You feel like you're wearing a scarlet letter on your forehead that your father was murdered and that you're different and you feel different. And our kids in our neighborhoods, they see those things. They see things they shouldn't see. They see the yellow tape. They see the makeshift memorials with those little stuffed animals. They see blood on the street. They see and hear gunshots at night. I get questions when I'm at schools sometimes about, Mr. Negrin, what do I do when I hear the bullets? When I hear gunshots. And you got to talk to a kid about having a plan for that in their house. Do you go to the bathtub? Do you get behind the refrigerator? you shouldn't have to have those conversations. So even though things are so much better in terms of violence here in Philadelphia with a 40-year low, we still have far too many shootings. Just last night, two murders, and I look at those numbers every morning that happen in Philadelphia. And our children are listening to that. Our children are impacted by that. So I ask the question, I say, how many of you have been impacted by violence in your immediate family? And typically, depending on where I am in the city, 80% of the room will raise their hand.
Wow.
And then I can have a conversation about, guess what? It's okay. Because I saw something like that too, and I went through something like that too, and I lost my dad. And that doesn't mean that you're stuck in that neighborhood. That doesn't mean that that's going to limit your life. You have the ability to go to, if you focus on your education, if you stay active and out of trouble with things like sports like I did, and you have that family support and a strong faith, it's possible that you can go to law school, you can get your college degree, and you can help run the 5th largest city in the entire country.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, a Latino in the 5th largest city in this country. Yeah. And Philadelphia, I think that was kind of groundbreaking for Philadelphia because there aren't many Latinos still in City Hall.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a lot better. I mean, we've got some Latinos strategically placed in important positions.
Okay.
But in terms of sheer numbers, we still have a lot of work to do.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And so in the future, like I know I see you in the neighborhoods, I see you at events all over the city. So is the mayor's term going to be up soon?
Yeah, he's got a year and a half left.
He's got a year and a half left. So are you going to stay with the city, or are you going to?
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, I think I'm looking at my options right now. I think I'll have some choices. I think we've had a lot of success. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
My career so far has been in and out of the public and private sector. So I could see myself continuing to do that the rest of my life. I love public service. So looking for the right opportunity and the right position, I think, to make a difference. I don't think of my career in terms of job titles and positions. It's more in terms of what do I get to do and what can I get accomplished. So I'd be perfectly happy, I think, the rest of my career going in and out of the private sector as the opportunities provided themselves.
So going back to the mayor, does he let you do whatever you want? Does he say, Rich?
Not quite.
No.
Yeah, almost. He's not a micromanager. He's an incredibly strong leader, but he's got a lot of great ideas. The mayor's a policy wonk. So, we're doing something really monumental next week. We're going to launch the first municipal innovation lab here in Philadelphia that we've ever had, and it's different than any innovation lab going on around the entire country. In fact, Harvard Kennedy School, the Ash Center is writing about it because it's so unique. Wow. The mayor helped frame, I came up with kind of the initial idea, and when you bring stuff like that to the mayor, he proves it every single time. So he's got ideas, he's creative. I like pulling him in on decisions. Cool. None of us are sort of out there on our own. And it's important to get not only his buy-in and his support, but his creative ideas. He's got one of the best minds in terms of policy of anybody I've ever met.
Well, great, man. That's amazing. You guys definitely do make a great team.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have today. I would like to thank my guest, Richard Negrin, for joining me. And I would like to thank you for tuning in. You have been watching Entre Nosotros on CCP TV, the educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. I'm your host, Gilberto Gonzalez. See you next time.